Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me this week is Jason Pickle, founder and president of Volunteer Botanicals. Thank you very much for joining me today, Jason.
Hey, good morning, David. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Jason, I always like to start the podcast with a little bit of background. So, how did you get involved with the cannabis industry?
I've been a big proponent of the plant my whole life. I'm one of those people that even as a young experimenter, so to speak, alcohol never really resonated with me and cannabis did. Now, growing up in the state of Tennessee, that was maybe not the right thing to be delving into, but it cooperated with me, my mind, my body in a way that just that made sense. And I was kind of realizing that maybe this paradigm was a little bit off.
So it worked for you personally. When did you realize it was a potential business opportunity?
Yeah, a lifetime of evolution, right? Growing up here in the South, this was quite the stigma. I moved out to California. I spent 10, 12 years in Lake Tahoe. That was when the medical industry was thriving, and I got my medical card, began cultivating the plant. I'm a plant-based guy. I love all plants. I have gardens, animals, the whole deal. So I was able to physically touch the plant and learn from the plant and experience the plant for myself. And it just started really changing my paradigm completely, moving from a place like Tennessee to Northern California, not with the intention to get into the space, but just kind of the wave that took over me and the different way of thinking, how you could potentially maximize wellness out of the plant, not just recreation.
Has it always been Volunteer Botanicals, or is that the latest iteration?
No, it's always been Volunteer Botanicals. Spending 12 years in Tahoe in Northern California, a few years in Colorado, we moved back, me and a couple of partners moved back to Tennessee once the Farm Bill happened, and Tennessee is very ag heavy, and we started Volunteer Botanicals right around that time in 2018.
So what is, in your opinion, the best way to make a cannabis beverage?
Oh, man. Hey, that's something everyone's trying to figure out right now, right? Mm-hmm. And our company, Volunteer Botanicals, we are a tech-focused company. So tech first, product second. And we realized early on, accidentally, that formulations matter. And primarily, we were focused in the first few years of our company on formulation technology for solid oral dose formats, capsules, tablets, how to get control of all these different cannabinoids and put them into precision dosing technology that allowed more consumer-friendly deliverables. And I believe Beverage is now just exposing that opportunity faster than maybe the health and wellness side did. So the beverage space has exploded over the last few years, but everybody's still trying to figure it out. It's primarily dominated by hemp and cannabis companies who may not be beverage savvy. And now we've got a lot of people on the alcohol side that have a lot of interest in joining. So we're square peg, round hole analogy is happening in real time, and everyone's kind of figuring it out. But we're having to leverage food scientists, true flavor houses, beverage development, companies, consultants, rather than just saying as a cannabis company, hey, don't worry, we've got it all figured out, which is kind of the MO of our industry, is I don't need any help. I want to vertically integrate. I can do it all ourselves. And this is an incredible opportunity to learn from the beverage industry, but also to apply what we know from the tech side to a brand new space.
How do you apply that to a brand new space? And how do you get client buy-in to the technology?
We're learning in real time. I'm humble enough to say that, right? This is a bleeding edge industry. We've been working with a whole host of cannabinoids and other botanical extracts, right? We're Volunteer Botanicals. We're not Volunteer Hemp or Volunteer Cannabis. We haven't had the luxury of having a marijuana program. And so, there's a lot of consumer sentiment and demand for this form factor. And which I find intriguing, right? If you would have asked me, even though we've had this technology for 8 years, both on the powder and liquid side, that people would be drinking THC in the future, and it might change our entire business model, I would say you're insane. So I believe this is something that taps into almost humanity, sitting around the fire with people, having conversations, drinking a beverage. And for whatever reason, I think that core feeling of socialization is what's driving this. It's easy to understand. You don't have to get anybody to change their how they're participating. They're always cracking open a beverage or going to the refrigerator. So, and then now we're putting it into a low dose, which is something that even it appeals to more and more people of that maybe not cannabis savvy or have never touched this plant in any other way other than this beverage. So I believe it's opening up an opportunity, but that opportunity is being kind of carved out in real time.
Well, it is interesting how the beverage is already woven into the social fabric. Whereas when you go to these social situations and people are offering you a drink or something like that, it's always, there's this awkwardness where it's like, oh, no, don't worry. I have a mint or I've got an edible, it's just, there's more of an understanding when it's a beverage.
It is. And I think that's that lack of friction, we'll call it, that in the past, my parents are in their 80s, right? When I started this company, even though it was based on hemp and non-intoxication and wellness and making supplements, they thought I was crazy. And, this last year, they tried their first cannabis beverage and they never would have touched it. It went to the extent of maybe rubbing some pain cream on their elbow. But here they are now in their 80s saying, oh, I get it. And that's very fascinating to me as someone who's been around this plant for so long, but it's had this stigma associated with it that for whatever reason in this format just doesn't exist or is much less friction. So it allows people to touch the plant in a very conscious way that we thought on when we started our company that would be the supplement side of things. We develop supplements. We have tablet presses here in-house, and we believed, putting it in a chewable tablet or something that you swallow and it can go in a pill case might be the thing to reach that consumer base that's afraid of it. And it still was still challenging, but we're all comfortable with this. This is so new though, David. All of this is so new, even though if you've been in this space, you've seen it, you see the proliferation of these beverages. But, even my friends that are cannabis consumers here in the South, many of them don't even know that this exists. They've never even tried one of these. So, even for them that are okay with flour or vapes or gummies, this is still like, what do you mean you're drinking it? That makes no sense. Like it must taste terrible. Like who would do that? So we still have, all these kind of misunderstanding again. But again, we just go right back to the form factor of, well, that's easy to understand.
And it's been kind of fun to chart that progress with our coverage of the industry. From the first time we started talking about cannabis beverages and people not being able to find them anywhere except maybe in a cooler in a dispensary, to now people are leaving the party because they need to go and get more and bring them back. One thing I'm curious about, so where do you stand in the debate between hemp-derived and the THC side of the business?
I stand directly in the middle. And what I mean by that is I know in my heart of hearts, this plant is cannabis, period, at the end of the day. And you've got low THC cannabis on the hemp side, and you've got high THC cannabis on the quote marijuana side, which is to me a terrible word. But it was an attempt for people to try to draw the line in the sand of what differentiates the two and how can we keep these two industries functioning but separate. And what we've learned, David, is that was just even though it was our best stitch effort in 2018, it didn't really solve anything. And we're back to now intoxicants being used through hemp, which has a significant impact on the marijuana side of things. But I also am a big proponent of as many people as possible, putting cannabinoids in their body because I believe they're good for them. So the hemp opportunity allows people to maybe touch something that they wouldn't touch in a marijuana state, or if their state didn't have the opportunity to have a recreational or medical program. So I see both sides, but I'm stuck in the middle because I still think what's most important is we continue to push the cannabis plant forward, because I do believe in my heart that it's a good thing. So it's going to be just like it's been this entire time. It's a balancing act until we get some sort of federal legalization that parks these, and it's going to be parked based on milligram. There's no other way to do it. Like the whole 0.3% or 1%, or they're variables that really, if you understand behind the scenes, none of this makes any sense. Especially when you're formulating and things go higher and things go lower and you got to dilute, dilution is the solution we hear over and over and over. But the reality is everyone's just trying to find a way to continue to run their business model and fit that box. But that box is still challenging because I'll be honest with you, this does make a big impact in a negative way on the marijuana space. But now we're beginning to see all these MSOs really understand that, wow, maybe this is an opportunity that we can potentially also function on both sides of the table here.
Well, the hemp side of the business is facing a bit of a regulatory existential threat. Does that keep you up at all as to how it might impact your business or, how people can get more cannabis into their system?
I don't think it keeps me up because, as you know, as someone that helps tell these stories, if you've been in this space longer than 30 days, this is just another day in the space. I've had many the sky is falling moments. None of them, the sky is yet to fall. Does it make me a little bit fearful? Sure. But this is a high risk business anyway from day one. I think the dust will settle. And I think all of this will continue to move forward in more of an as-is fashion. I think we're going to see some pass over to the alcohol industry, to the ABC, those kind of mechanisms to regulate it because the Department of Ag isn't really equipped to regulate this stuff on this level, these kinds of products. So I think we're going to see some transition. And what I've seen over the last year, especially here in Tennessee, is the alcohol wholesalers and retailers do not want it to go away. So, 2 years ago, nobody wanted hemp to stick around if it was intoxicating. Today, there's a whole lot of people that are pushing this thing forward, as well as silently, publicly and silently, because they're realizing the amount of money that's being made in this, and alcohol is in a decline, a free fall, some might even say.
You started on the health and wellness side. Do you struggle with your role in the intoxicating side of the business, as it kind of pulls you away from health and wellness? Or do you try to balance that?
I think it's a balance. I still think that the intoxicating side is wellness. There is a recreational aspect, but what I'm hearing even from alcohol wholesalers in Tennessee, starting January 1, the maximum dose that you can put into a beverage is 30 milligrams, and that's still fairly high. Mm-hmm. But we're currently in the state, there are no real regulations, right? It's just 21 and up. So you're seeing 100 milligram shots and all sorts of things. But the alcohol guys are saying these are being purchased by elderly people. Mm-hmm. It's not, your weed guy, so to speak, or weed gal coming in. They're being purchased by people that are 60, 70, 80 years old that are getting off of opiates or have a very difficult time with pain or sleep. And so regardless of what your paradigm might believe about intoxicants, we're also seeing people find the benefits for that. Now, that's too strong for me as a consumer my whole life. But when we started our company, it was on powderizing cannabinoids, compounding them together, putting other like-kind ingredients, vitamins, minerals, other botanical extracts, pressing them into a tablet and giving a consumer a very specific use case for them to take it. I still think that part of the industry, even though it died off around COVID, it will come back, and it'll come back in a vengeance. But ironically, even the intoxicating sides, people are finding wellness aspects from that. And so we can't just discount it as strictly recreational.
Do you think that comeback will be driven by the sleep aid market?
You know what I honestly believe? I think the comeback will be driven by beverage, because what I think is happening in beverage is it's breaking down the paradigm.
Okay.
And when the paradigm of THC is bad goes away, because I've tried it now and I'm okay with it, I think it's much easier to go into a pharmacy or a health and wellness store and say, well, that has some of that in there too, and it's in a form that I'm very comfortable with. So I think we're stripping away the stigma with all of this stuff one bit at a time. And I think the legality, if this becomes more and more in a box and you see more and more larger name brand companies get into this space, both on the vitamin nutraceuticals side as well as the alcohol side, you're just going to get this natural evolution of people's thinking to say, oh, well, if they do it, it must be okay, right? It's not just the cannabis guys now. It's, Earth Wellness and this alcohol brand. So I think all of it, even though it's maybe a threat to the industry, it still evolves the customer base and expands who we're all trying to reach. So I believe really beverage is going to be the thing that gets people now okay with looking at these types of products like they may have looked at CBD in the past as, oh, this is strictly a wellness play. So it's shedding, I think, old paradigms and opening up people's hearts and minds to maybe I was wrong. So what else might I try?
Okay, you had mentioned previously about MSOs getting into the hemp-derived side of the business. When do you think sort of big beverage enters the space formally?
They're coming. We've had multiple conversations with very large beverage companies, many of which are talking about moving into R&D in 2026. We've got multiple breweries, distillers in Tennessee. The whiskey game is really big, right? So lots of distillers are looking at ways to keep their brand relevant, to fill holes in declining profits, and they've been watching, right? They've been a little bit of, there's a fear on their side because they don't want to jeopardize anything that they've put on the alcohol side forward. And so I think as things become regulated, or in Tennessee, the box is very, very clear come January 1, it's all moving to the ABC model and everything's going through wholesalers. That's just going to expedite these companies coming in. And, they're coming, but they're not moving fast, where the hemp and cannabis guys, no offense, they'll throw whatever at the wall, see what sticks. And if it doesn't stick, we'll just come up with another widget and throw it at the wall, see if it sticks. These guys take things slow. Their R&D processes are what you would expect in big beverage, stability tests, what manufacturing processes. And we're seeing people that are coming and starting multiple brands at one time because nobody knows who any of the brands are in the market. And, people in the cannabis space might recognize a Wana, or Uncle Arnie's, or an MSO brand, but in reality, outside of the cannabis space, nobody knows who any of those people are. And so we're having people even play the game of, hey, maybe I'll start a couple brands, see what sticks, and I'll put a bullet in two of them, and the third one might stick just because it's geared towards women. So there's a lot of experimenting going on as well that are coming from beverage people, but they're looking at it with a completely different perspective than the hemp guys are.
So that's interesting, particularly about the R&D really ramping up next year, because I was curious if once big beverage came in, it would be through M&A. But I guess if there are no truly brands that are well established enough, maybe that's not the way to go.
Yeah, I think there's a whole lot of waiting, wondering, fear, curiosity from all of those parties, that everyone's taking their own approach based on their legal team's guidance. Some people are a little bit more risk tolerant, and others say, I can't believe you're even talking about doing this. This is illegal. So that both sides of the conversations are happening, where people are saying, hey, let's dip our toe in the water a little bit at a time and see what happens. And then, some of the bigger, larger, multi-billion-dollar companies are saying, let's just make sure this is actually going to stick around and we don't jeopardize over 100 years of work that we put into our beverage portfolio.
Well, I understand that. I mean, the one brand that made so much sense was Jones Soda getting in with Mary Jones and then kind of separating from that side of the business. And that one was a real shock to us. Like, I thought that of all brands, big or independent, that one made sense. I thought Jones Soda was really a play that made sense.
And I think that's where we're all at. It kind of shocked me too. I know the guys over there. And back to, I think we're on the bleeding edge of this. We're learning in real time, right? And so even those that are getting in might change a business strategy downstream once they realize either the risk reward lines up. Like, we're seeing a lot of people who were in this space from the marijuana side and dispensary model where the drinks didn't sell. And that was the model for a lot of brands early on, was to state by state get their manufacturing set up so they could have a beverage to be sold in the cannabis market through the metric system. And now they're realizing that that model is killing us. That's nobody's buying it, and it's extremely costly, and I can't ship it anywhere. And so that's where I'm seeing now. Again, you wouldn't have realized it until you did it. So we're, hindsight's always 2020. But But now I think people entering the space are a little bit more conscious of that and saying, I'm not even taking that step at all. There's no way I would want to do that when the hemp runway allows us to work directly with nationwide wholesalers.
So when it comes to people entering business and the current players in the business, what steps should they take to make sure they're sourcing the best ingredients for the product?
Slow down. Everybody's moving really, really fast. They're moving into names, partnerships that are known. It may not be the best. They are known. I think a lot of people are building formulations that aren't scalable. So there's a lot of mistakes being made. And I think it's because people are starting small and they're starting localized and they're starting at their friend's brewery, or they built a formula that they thought tasted really great and it did. But then when you start to go scale that formulation, you realize very quickly that was not built for scaling. It's ripe with problems in terms of secondary fermentation, material settling in cans that causes issues with testing. But a lot of people got out of the gate guns blazing, and it's hard to go backwards and rework an entire formulation a year downstream when everything's scaling and breaking. So I think anybody that's been in the cannabis space or the hemp space realizes that this industry moves very, very fast, and the beverage space is slow. The margins are thin. Small mistakes are big mistakes. It's hard to recover when you're underwater. And so slow down, I think is the key here. Take your time. When we're talking with alcohol companies and they're saying, it's going to take us a year to do this. It's very different than the majority of the customers that I've been dealing with over the last 2 years. And I can respect that, because even on the supplement side of things, it took us 2 to 2.5 years to really get control of that side of our technology, to understand that all the extracts are different, all the cannabinoids function differently, the stability of them are different. And you don't realize that until you do it, right? And early on in this space, a lot of the brands are making a lot of mistakes. And some of those mistakes in beverage, there isn't enough margin to keep that going. You got to do things right. And I think the second side of this, David, that I'm finding intriguing, especially with our company being Volunteer Botanicals and not necessarily being Volunteer Cannabis, is I'm seeing that people are realizing that maybe cannabis is like a gateway plant. And what else is out there? And what else can I add to my cannabis beverage that is providing some different effects that are still natural and from other plants? And so there's, even now moving into 2026, we're seeing people shift, and they're not just making cannabis specific beverages anymore. They're looking at effects driven beverages, and they're looking at the functionality of it rather than the functionality only being get high and recreation. And so be conscious of that. This is an ever evolving landscape. It's got a glut of product in the market, and the market's now telling us we want this and we don't want that. And once you jump in the deep end, it's hard to swim sometimes. And so slow down, take your time. We're in the first inning. This hasn't started yet. This is the top of the first.
I mean, being at, let's say, the early stages of the game, what is your outlook? What does the future of multiple national beverages look like in terms of what the consumer is looking for and what brands are able to offer?
It hasn't even started yet. You have stories like Poppy. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Let's be real. I can say this on this podcast. In terms of flavor profile, it's a subpar beverage. It doesn't even really taste that good.
Yeah. But it's got SpongeBob on the can.
It's got all these things, right? It's got this pre and post. It's got funny marketing. It's, and it's sold for what? $1-2 billion, some crazy number, right? Mm-hmm. So what does that really tell us? Is it the function of the beverage that people are buying now, or is it this great flavor profile? And so these are, to me, beacons out in the light and in the darkness that are blinking, saying, "Wow, look at that!" A lot of people are choosing that drink not because maybe it tastes good, but their perception of what the function is a better choice than other beverages. And I think we're seeing that same thing with THC. Is people are choosing THC, yes, because it's intoxicating in a beverage, but they also like that it's 10 calories. They also like that it doesn't give them a hangover. They also like that it helps them sleep better at night. So there are these functions that are coming out of THC that aren't necessarily focused specifically on getting really, really high. that are intriguing to people. And I think that's just the beginning of that. If we can make bottled waters full of vitamins and minerals, where you're actually like almost getting a daily dose, why wouldn't you? If you can take a soda and remove all the terrible ingredients and put good ingredients in it and natural caffeine and natural flavorings, why wouldn't you? So I think we're at the very precipice of what functional drinks means and what it looks like. And THC beverages are just slamming the gas on that to say, and we're realizing that people do want functionality. And it's back to the original part of this discussion. It's a whole lot easier to pick this up and drink it than it is to buy a bottle of pills and keep them in your pocket and don't forget to take them. And so I could see in the next 5 years the beverage landscape being completely different than it is now. And this idea of functionality or use case driving how beverages are developed. And we're already seeing it. Some of our THC customers that were buying from us, our liquids for last couple of years, are now making beverages that don't have any cannabinoids in them at all. And they're using lion's mane mushrooms and cordyceps and vitamin stacks and things that provide energy that are natural. So we're already seeing people say, all right, cool, I've got that. I want to do the next thing that may not be things that are intoxicating or might be for a customer base that's even bigger than this. Could be children. It could be people that come to my brewery that are looking for something that's just an alternative to beer. They drink a beer and then they have this. And I can get the same dollar amount from either beverage. So why wouldn't I provide that? And that's just starting, right? It's almost just now in our consciousness.
Why is that? You say, why wouldn't we? But why haven't we? This industry has been around a long time.
I think what we're beginning to see, and it's something we didn't understand early on with our technology, is not all ingredients are suitable for specific form factors, right? And when we started diversifying our liquid ingredients for beverage, it was because we were working with a lot of different canners and co-packers and manufacturers that would say, all right, we love your cannabinoid ingredients. There's no flavor. They work fast. They're easy to blend. Great, easy for math. Can you do that with lion's mane? And we'd say, well, there's tons of water-soluble lion's mane powder out there. Why don't you just use it? And they would laugh and say, it's terrible. Like, from a manufacturing perspective, it's not really water-soluble. It's hydrophobic. Some drops to the bottom, some sits at the top. Some can clog lines. I've had to develop an entirely new SOP for getting this into a slurry, and they're still settling in the cans, which is kind of annoying. Nobody wants to have mushroom powder in their mouth at the bottom of a can. And so these kind of variables are, I think, prohibitive for how those types of products are being used. Now, if we're dumping a bunch of powder into a coffee cup and blending it like mud water, suitable. If you're trying to make a flavorless RTD, not suitable. And that's where technology comes in, right? Is how do we take this extract, put it into a format that's consumer friendly, that allows the development of a new style of beverage. Now we've got something. Now it can go on tap. Now it can be a water that doesn't taste like cheesesteak because it's full of mushrooms. And so I think we're kind of at that precipice with everything, AI, where everybody's talking about AI, but it's the technology being kind of the counterpoint of what is the potential future yield of this thing. And this thing could be mushrooms or cannabis or a myriad of other inputs, is where we're seeing the real evolution and potential of the industry. And for us, the functional beverage industry is, if you give a manufacturer the proper tools in their toolbox, they can make anything.
Yeah.
But if it's the wrong tool, they use it once and say, yeah, that tool's annoying. I'm not going to deal with that again. And so that's how the light bulb went off. Why not yet? Well, why not yet is a lot of those ingredients are not suitable for these types of beverages and this kind of movement. And not everybody wants to blend a protein powder shake to get their mushrooms. I don't.
No, I don't either. Like, and I didn't get cheesesteak. I got like bad cauliflower, but I mean, it's a work in progress.
Right.
So talking about supply chain and supply chain integrity, how often should manufacturers check in with suppliers to maintain that high quality standard? Just because we've seen a lot of really good relationships out of the gate that have deviated due to problems with maintaining quality.
It's paramount, right? It's paramount. The supply chain is still one of those things, almost like testing, right? Testing these beverages is very challenging, but the supply chain for these beverages is also very challenging. In our space, there's a lot of brokers, a lot of people in the middle that are not the doers. And for us, we've had to work really, really hard over the last 8 years for all of our products to ensure not only a consistent and available supply chain, but one that's trustworthy and compliant and doing things the right way. And it's paramount in this industry. And I believe people that are coming in from alcohol or other ancillary CPG models, they have no clue what this means. And, let's be real, when there's money on the table, it provides an opportunity for nefarious players to come in and understanding where these products are being grown and extracted, the processes that are being used for extraction, to create a consistent product it's the most important part of it. And we've seen a lot of turnover. You've seen that the mile highs come and go. You see these really, really big entities that were set up to be that core piece of the supply chain fall apart because the industry wasn't ready for it. So that's also challenging, right? Is consumer demand drives the supply chain, but if the supply chain can't support itself, it just eats itself alive. We've been in this space 8 or 9 years, so you've seen the mighty fall. And but yet that's the most important part of this whole thing. Let's be real.
How does your patented solution improve problems with consistency? And does it improve any other common bottlenecks that you have in beverage manufacturing?
Yes. And I think that's the key that we've learned through trial and error, both on the pharmaceutical grade powder side, our rapid dose for the powders and the rapid dose for the liquid, is when we started our company, and this was taught to us by the scientist that helped us learn the technology. The technology came out of the pharmaceutical industry. And the root use case for the technology was to take active pharmaceutical ingredients, APIs, that come in a myriad of formats and put them into a consistent intermediate. And when it's in a consistent intermediate, regardless of the input, the throughput is consistent. Now you can have control over the formulation. And man, that resonates with me, right? If I'm working with a crude cannabis acidic extract versus a highly processed isolate, all of them have all these different variables, right? So in terms of formulation or use case, who's going to step in the middle and say, let me solve the issues for this particular use case? And that's where rapid dose really came in. Was we saw the challenge of different cannabinoids and how each one of them required their own set of SOPs. Mm. And when we were doing chewable tablets and supplements and sublingual tablets under the tongue, many people contracted with us because they wanted a 2.5 milligram product of one cannabinoid and a 5 milligram of another. And they wanted that to be consistent every single time they put it in their mouth, right? Which is challenging with gummies. It's challenging with oils. Different densities causes maybe a lack of really good homogeneity. And so the principle is kind of on the pharmaceutical side in terms of how do we make sure every dose is the same, is the core root of what we're trying to do with our rapid dose tech. Now, we focused on health and wellness to get those precision dosing tools in place for all of these plants into a solid oral dose. But it's really the same story in these plants, is people want in these beverages, people want the same experience every time. They don't want to drink a beverage and get floored, or drink a beverage and say nothing happened. So, or have a myriad of other botanical extracts in that beverage, but it tastes terrible, right? And so rapid dose can step in and say, let me solve the problems through research and development that we know this large scale beverage manufacturer needs, and they may not even know they need it. So they have a consistent liquid ingredient, and you're not blending 6, 7, 8 different powders together that all have a different set of SOPs. And that is where we can, I think, move from small batch creation of products to large batch consistency, because all of the inputs are now the same. So it really makes the scaling of it, the manufacturing of it, just so much more efficient, right? That's the key and the root of what we do here with rapid dose. And people come to us all the time, fix this. I'm trying to put in a beverage and it doesn't work. Can you fix it? And they pay us to do R&D, and sometimes we can and sometimes we can't. But that's the important thing, is understand what the use case is, and how do we provide the best possible ingredient so we can get a consistent, precise dose with low to no impact of flavor profile.
Have you had any issues with shelf stability?
This is always an issue, depending on the cannabinoid, depending on the form factor, depending upon how it's manufactured. People may not tell you that, but the reality is absolutely. Degradation, whether that degradation is based on oxidation, is it in a can? Is it sticking to the sides? Is it compounds that are a little bit less stable, like THCV? All of these things are variables at the end of the day. We just tested one of our acidic crude powders not too long ago. I think we had it from 2020, maybe 2019. We still have some left. And we thought, oh, let's test it. Let's just see where it's gone. It's from crude. It's got tons of cannabinoids in it. And there was a shift. Right? So we saw some of the acids flip over. All the cannabinoids were accounted for, but I mean, this is a live extract, right? So it's still doing its process, even though it's in a temperature-controlled vault with no access to oxygen or light. It's still a moving, living thing, and this is the reality that when we work with plants, and why pharmaceutical doesn't really want to work with plants. They want to create a synthetic form of that so it doesn't change or it doesn't degrade. But let's be real; each cannabinoid is different, and depending on how you're using it and how you're applying it, you're gonna get different results or different stability issues or concerns you're going to need to address.
How can these beverage makers introduce these products to get more use out of some of their existing equipment they already have in-house?
That's a great question. And I'll focus first on breweries. Breweries have been the worst hit by the THC beverages. The data's out. It's hit all categories. We've seen a decline in all alcohol categories, but breweries in particular have been hit the most, which I'm a beer guy, right? So I spent a lot of time in Colorado and California in a market that's just full of fantastic microbrews, and they all boomed just incredibly huge. But are they all sustainable? Is there enough market for all of them? And I think what we're realizing quickly is there's not, unless they get a bit creative with what they already have in front of them. And one of the interesting things that I've noticed is many of these hemp brands that are entering the space are going to a brewery to get the product made. But quite often that brewery isn't making their own product. They're making the products for other people. And I find that fascinating, because if a hemp brand has to pay to develop their brand name, they have to pay for manufacturing, they have to pay for ingredients, they have to pay for distribution. That brewery has all of those things already. They already have a brand and brand integrity and brand loyalty. They have a place where people come in and drink their beverages right there in real time. They manufacture them themselves. They have the distribution systems in place already. So I find that as extremely advantageous if I were in a brewer's shoes to say, man, why don't we do this? Why don't we throw our hat in? We've got some of the lowest COGS out of everybody if this is what we're doing already and it's our space. So I feel on the beverage manufacturing side there's a ton of opportunity, but there's also fear. I don't know if I want to associate this with my brand. I don't know if I'll do it manufacturing wise, but I may not do it for me for these sets of reasons. And everybody's reasons are a little bit different, but they have the tools in their tool belt. They now have to learn some different processes. But one of the things I think I find most fascinating is for breweries that haven't gotten into this space yet is they are looking at doing it as a potential revenue stream in their downtime and their line time, but they have no clue that it takes a day to make these drinks. It doesn't take a month, right? Like it takes to brew beer. Early on, that blew my mind. Like, oh, I can make an IPA in 2 to 3 weeks. I can make a lager in 4 to 5 weeks. I'm like, damn, it just sits in that tank the whole time. And you can't do anything else with that tank. And then you bottle it and sell it and your margin is razor thin. Huh. Well, why wouldn't you just spin up your own sparkling beverage in 6 hours, put it on tap, try it, see if your consumers like it. If they like it, put it in a can. You got a distributor that's probably will be willing to take this beverage over beer right now. Why wouldn't you give it a shot? And then realize that the margin is currently way bigger than beer. So they've got the opportunity, I think, to diversify what their current manufacturing system and processes are with some micro adjustments and be a real player and a real contender, if nothing else, just regionally, or if nothing else, just in their tap room, and providing their consumers who may not be drinking beers something else to drink, whether that's THC or not. Use the tools you've got in front of you to continue to keep your brand relevant and make different kinds of beverages that keep people coming in your doors.
What are some of those micro adjustments? I mean, I have to imagine that, transitioning a line over to an entirely different type of beverage would take a fair amount of cleaning and maintenance.
It is, but ironically, it's not as challenging, I think, as what people think. We're not brewing anything here. We're basically making something that's 98% water, right? So in terms of the cleaning and the maintenance and that sort of stuff, it's very, very easy. It's very different than compared to beer. No yeasts, no microbials, any sort of things, it moving from one to the other that you should be conscious of, but it's not in the secondary beverage. So what we like to do with people is talk through their manufacturing process, see what they're already doing. We know there's trouble with variables like dissolved oxygen, troubles with beating up an emulsion, meaning when are you adding it into the matrix of ingredients, can liners, some of these things that might deviate a little bit away from what they're already doing, but the adjustments usually aren't costly. They're more process driven. And I think the biggest challenge is brewers, especially, it's their craft, it's what they do. And it's their passion and their love. They're artists. Brewers are artists, right? And so now you're saying, well, apply your creativity in something that's water-based and sparkly, and you get it out the door in a day. And it's kind of like, it's not real cool, So,
I mean, it's not cool, but I mean, you understand the opportunity. If a craft brewer comes to you today, says, hey, you're right, margins are thin, times are tough. How quickly until they can, have something in a tap, have something to market?
We encourage them to start small. It could be as quickly as they want it, right?
Yeah.
We say step one, are you gonna roll this out under your brand, or is this something you're just gonna put on tap in your tap room, right? If it's something you're gonna put on tap and experiment out first, what's your smallest tank you got? Is it 5 barrels? Is it 2 barrels? Is it 3 barrels? We can work through the SOPs with them to be able to get this out into a physical format. Some people are putting it into margarita machines, right? Where they don't even have to put it in their tanks. Okay. They're just saying, give me the math. I'm going to put it in this machine that's behind the counter. I'm going to charge $9 and give them a 5 milligram THC margarita, and we'll just see who buys it. And then all of a sudden they're like, wow, tons of people bought it. Huh. Interesting. Yeah. So it could be as simple as that, or as complex as developing an entire brand portfolio of labels and finished goods. But if people want to get going quickly and easily, there are some pathways that we've developed that can get people up and running literally within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, literally, outside of licensure and that sort of stuff, the compliance end of things.
The infused margarita behind the bar, that could be a game changer.
Yeah, we had a brewery here in Tennessee that was doing it, and they were putting 2 milligrams, 2 per serving per 12 ounce, and charging $9.
Yeah,
and killing it. Yeah. Like, couldn't keep it in stock. And I thought,
believe it.
And nowhere in the marijuana cannabis space would that even be possible. People would say $9 for 2 megs, that's stupid. Mm-hmm. But behind the bar, everyone else is like, sounds kind of cool. Let's give it a shot. And it just blows my mind when you see that, and you see that the customers are sitting there, they already know you and trust you. What does it hurt to give them another option? At least give it a shot. Whether you believe in it or not, just give it a shot. See what they say.
Really? One that, trades rail tequila for a different ingredient. That's not bad.
It's not bad. No, It's not bad. And I think that's what ends up really getting beverage manufacturers or brewers especially on board, is when they say, man, the work is way less. Mm-hmm. The margins are way more. The light bulb goes off and they say, well, I started with a margarita machine, then I put it on tap, then I put it in a can. Now I'm co-manufacturing for other people that want to do this because I've learned the process. And you've got 4 or 5 streams of income coming in that didn't exist a month ago. And that's telling. And I've seen it happen with small husband and wife breweries to very, very large, big brewers have started to entertain the option of serving this to their customers, manufacturing their own brands, and then co-manufacturing for other people in dead and down line time as a secondary revenue stream it's really powerful for some of these, and they can turn their business around in months.
What separates Rapidos from competitors or similar competitors on the market?
Yeah, we're not a cannabis company.
Yeah,
I think first and foremost is we are a technology company that works with cannabis ingredients and cannabinoids and components. Rapidos is a form. We have 2 formats. We have a pharmaceutical quality powder, and we have a microemulsion that's suitable for beverages. We focus on safety and stability, and we focus on applying the technology to as many different botanical extracts as possible. I think cannabis and cannabinoids, we've learned, are a widget, and they provide formats and function that are appealing. But like I said earlier, I believe the consumer is looking for function, and that function can come into an alternative to a gummy, an alternative to a pharmaceutical, an alternative to an alcoholic beverage. And that's where Rapidos, I think, separates ourselves from some of the cannabis companies that are dominating the space right now. We're just not cannabis focused. We love cannabinoids and we love the plant, but we think there's a lot more to it. So we want to solve the problems for those ingredients as well as this whole industry begins to kind of dovetail out into what's to come.
If people want to bring your technology in-house or swap it out or swap out another one, does it take a change in SOPs, or is it kind of plug and play?
It depends on what they're trying to do. Now, on the powder side, it might. Our powders are mineral-based. They're not water-soluble spray-dried powders, so they are specifically designed for tablets and capsules. They are more of the kind of pharmaceutical, nutraceutical type application. And not many people are familiar with that. They're like, I've been working with this real fluffy, water-soluble powder that doesn't really work. It will work for this, but it won't work for that. So there are definitely some SOP adjustments on the powder side, but those are easy to work through, especially if you're high speed manufacturing, because that's what these types of powders are designed for. On the liquid side, we're dealing with food science. There's a lot of people who say that their widget is a whole lot better than somebody else's widget in terms of emulsions and microemulsions. But this is food science, right? At the end of the day, like with or without cannabis people, emulsions exist, microemulsions, nanoemulsions exist, and they're used in all sorts of different applications. And so on our side of things, if you're swapping out X customer or X supplier's emulsions for our emulsions, it's an apples to apples play. We have low to no flavor profile, a whole host of botanical additives that people can use. SOPs are going to be the same. It's going to be formulation, weighing, gross weight versus active milligrams, understanding the math. If you're already doing that, then that's easy. If you're not, we have tools, formulation calculators that can help people understand that a milligram isn't a milligram. There's a weight milligram and there's an active milligram, and we're kind of accounting in beverage for both, and just understanding the tools and the know-how that's necessary to understand that from the ground up is what's challenging. But if we're swapping apples to apples on the liquid side, it's apples and apples. These are emulsions. At the end of the day, people think that theirs are that much better or that much exciting, and it's really based on market share, that they've got a little bit more market share than somebody else, so they can tell that story louder.
Jason, I really appreciate you taking your time. You've been very generous with your time today. Before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience should know about yourself or Volunteer Botanicals?
Yeah, I think the thing that I'd like to share, and David, thank you. I would like to say thank you for an opportunity. It's enjoyable always to speak with people that are also passionate about what they do. And I feel that from you, and I hope you feel that from me, and I hope your listeners do as well. I believe the best is yet to come. And those of us that have been in the space a long time, it seems like a lifetime. But we're now beginning to see some cracks, and the consumers are coming in, and those ideas of how can we meet the needs of those consumers, that story may not have been relevant 5 years ago, 6 years ago. they're becoming more and more relevant today. So I'm more excited about the potential of compounding and reconstituting cannabinoids with a whole host of vitamins and minerals and botanicals than I am trying to get someone to consume a THC gummy. And I think that that's the exciting part of the industry, is looking at these as tools and pieces that create function, more than driving everyone to say this is all about intoxication. And I think we go back to the plant again. Is there's a whole lot of good stuff baked in this plant, and a lot of it isn't intoxicating. And so the best is yet to come. Stay curious, stay open, keep trying new things, and we're going to continue to open up to the mainstream audience that all of us are desperate to get to.
Jason, thank you again. It has been a pleasure.
Hey, David, you're the man. Thank you for what you do.
Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. For Jason Pickle, founder and president of Volunteer Botanicals, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.